Yeah, look, hey, it's my period, it's my era. So like, I remember 10, I remember 48 Hours, I remember Goonies, I remember Explorers, the list goes on and on. Breakfast Club, and there's a whole great raft of movies in the 80s that were born of that 70s movement, which was independent filmmaking that came out of Easy Rider and all that kind of stuff. The 80s was a kind of follow on from that. There was a sort of great independent vibe feel that maybe the studios hadn't kind of arched across everything at that point. It wasn't difficult for me to tap into that. I don't think. I think that was just part of my own sort of youth psyche, and the music helps create that. Yeah, it's and that was a lot of fun. It's kind of like you knew the tracks were there, and Matthew Vaughan's the same. Matthew's score's amazing. Matthew Margeson is a great musician, and he only used stuff. There's very little orchestra in there. I mean, there's moments, of course, when it really helps to move the story, but essentially it's synthesizers and electronic drums, and that really evokes that whole period very quickly, as does the right font. It's really interesting if you just write exactly does a great job. So it was good to just revisit that, and for some people that's fresh and new, who are born in the 80s, they won't remember it, and for those of us who were around, we go, oh right, that was that moment. Yeah. I do remember it. I don't know if I was watching it avidly. Did it make me proud? I don't know. I mean, at the time I said, it was like Eddie was like this kind of this joke that English people like to tell themselves about being self-deprecating. Oh, he's our famous underdog loser. He was celebrated in his hometown, and he was celebrated, but he was celebrated as a bit of a novelty and a joke. And that's why when I read the script, I was like, okay, here's the story to tell. Here's a chance to tell this story and kind of flip it on its head, which Matt Vaughn likes to do as well. And I understood why he pulled this script out and wanted to produce it, was that, we could retell this story and kind of take that expectation and what people thought they knew about him and say, look, if you manage to become an Olympian, irrespective of what you place, there's still a big achievement behind that. There's still a cost, personal, that's involved. And I'm a big believer in that. I like that, in all my films there's that. In my first film, Wild Bill, about a father who has to make a sacrifice to hold it. Thank you. Yeah, and there's a cost in those films for those characters, and I think that's why they're relatable. Because anything worth having, to my understanding, is there's a personal cost somewhere, and I think people get that. It's a really simple thing. And I like that Eddie really had that in spades. It's really got that story now, and he's relentless, and he's determined. And some people go he's crazy, but other people are like, that's a really admirable trait. That's great. For me, that's what it is. I don't know if I do cynicism very well. I don't know if I am optimistic. I think making a film was hard. I think if you get out there and do it, it's brilliant. I watch some films and go, that's great, and other people are like, that's terrible. I'm just like, but they made a film. It's really hard to make a film. I don't know. I wasn't cynical about him, and then of course Taron and Hugh are a massive part of that, because they're not like that in themselves either. They're in it for the same reason I am, and so that means we're all telling the same story about someone who we admire in our own way. Oh yeah, I mean, look, I've said it before. It's like the great parlour game. Who'd play me in a movie? And he's got like Taron Egerton playing him, who's like one of the best looking young. Yeah, it's like, and when he saw the film, he was like, I can't believe how much he looks like me. I'm like, yeah, Eddie, sure he does. I mean, Taron does this amazing transformation, but he. I know, but I know, but he in his attempt to keep them on, he creates a really interesting quirk and character, and. Yeah, look, we did have a good time. What I always say is that Taron wanted to impress Hugh, and Hugh was impressed. And that's a really good state of affairs to have on a set. Because you've got a young actor who's there in front of someone who he really admires and wants to do everything he can to make the actor go, okay, kid, yeah. And Hugh let that happen. Hugh's not kind of like a closed book. He's like, hey, this is really fucking great. And that's, he's not overly precious about being the person that he is. And that comes with great responsibility and, considerations and concerns. And I think when he feels comfortable, and which he did, and he's not someone who's lacking enthusiasm himself or commitment, it allowed these two actors to really play and enjoy telling the story. So I just had to point the camera at them. It's a studio in a way that Matthew runs it. It's more mainstream, yeah. No, look, Matthew's an old friend, and he rode me hard. He's like, exactly, and he's known me a long time. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He was like, hey, get it together. You can do better, which is good to have someone say to you. It's not a bad thing, and sometimes it's tough, but the results are manifest. They show themselves. And I had protection from the studios through Matthew. Sure. He was my studio, but he's also my friend, so I know I can trust him implicitly with how he's steering the ship. Because, the producer has a particular idea in his head, and he and I have to come together on that. And some things I'd win, and some things he'd win, and I'm sure it's a luxury. I'm sure if I get to do a studio picture, I might find it more complicated, and the politics a bit more complex. My politics were dealing with an old friend. Exactly. Hopefully they'll come back out for skiing and they'll see another movie about great skiing. It's kind of fun and it doesn't afraid to send itself up and not take itself too seriously, but at the same time have a serious, good message in it. Look, festival audiences are renowned all over the world, but they're people who love film. They come because they're going to see something different. They engage really quickly. They're there simply because they're excited by the opportunity, and they've not gone to a Cineplex and gone, what's on? What do I like the look of? They're like, hey, there's a movie with Hugh Jackman. Hey, there's a movie with Taron and Hugh. There's a movie by Matt Vaughn. I'm going to go. And that's the connection point.